Hey there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Webcomics.com. My name is Brad Geiger, and today we're going to take a question from the Webcomics.com mailbag and try to drill deep on it because it's got a lot of issues that I think are kind of universal. All right? So here goes. This is written into me recently. Says, I am currently in a rough situation for myself. For a while now, my income from Patreon has been helping to supplement our income monthly, not by a great amount, but every little bit helps. However, I recently had to take a part-time job in order to pay some bills and put some money into savings. My time is already taken up during the day as a stay-at-home dad for a 1-year-old and a 6-year-old when he's not in school. And because of my wife's hours, I am solely responsible for everything around the house. What I'm getting at is, at this point, I have extremely limited time to dedicate to my comic, not to mention my Patreon rewards. I have tried rearranging my schedule and staying up late and everything else possible, but I just can't seem to get ahead on anything. So I see 3 options for myself at this point. Number 1, post updates and Patreon rewards as I can manage them and risk a gradual downslide in patrons and income. Number 2, stop the comic and close up my Patreon campaign altogether until, hopefully, my situation changes, and hope that I can supplement my income in other ways. Number 3, make all comic updates moving forward for Patreon subscribers only. Of course, this option has the risk of option 1, where updates would still be as I can do them, but at least I'd be cutting my work down a little bit by making updates part of the reward tiers. I'm not expecting you to make this decision for me. I'm just interested in your take on the situation as a comic professional, as a family man yourself. As a side note, I do want to make it clear that my comic is more than just an income stream. I've been doing it for going on 12 years at this point, and I'd like to keep doing it if I can. But since I have people who are paying me through Patreon, I have to factor in the hard financial decisions. Okay, so this person sees three prospective choices that are laid out in front of him, and the first one just is you can already see the first one's not working, right? Post updates and Patreon rewards as I can manage them, and you're going to see a gradual downslide, absolutely, in patrons in income. Particularly if you're not putting out good work. In other words, I think in today's day and age with social media and so forth, you don't have to have that regular, you certainly don't have to have a daily comic, and I don't even think there's as great a need to do a something that falls on the same day every week, but you do have to be doing good work. And I've checked out your comic and your marking time. The writing is feels very much not compelling to me. The art is headshots with big empty backgrounds. You are not putting out the kind of stuff that people are willing to wait indeterminable amounts of time for. Number 3 says make all comic updates moving forward for Patreon subscribers only. My personal opinion on that is that that's untenable. At this point, I feel I still need my public-facing website in order to continue to bring in new prospective patrons to the Patreon campaign. And I have a really strong impulse, and I have no intention of proving this to myself, but I have a really strong feeling that if I stopped doing the public-facing comic, I would endanger my Patreon, because that public-facing comic is constantly bringing in new people who can be potential Patreon backers. And that leaves us with number 2, stop the comic. And I'm going to suggest, person to person, that this is your best choice at this time. First of all, I checked out your Patreon. It's really, I think we can agree, it's not bringing in a significant amount of money on a monthly basis. You could save that amount of money by not going out to eat a couple times, cutting a couple bills. This is not a significant amount of money that your comic is bringing in. And having read the last few updates of your comic, it is my opinion that you stopped working on this comic a long time ago. You just haven't admitted it to yourself. You're marking time. You're doing pretty base level writing. The art, like I said, is headshots with no backgrounds. You stopped working on this comic a long time ago. You just haven't been able to admit it to yourself. All right. So and I need to pause right here because none of that is meant. I'm trying to be honest, but I am not trying to hurt your feelings. So you have to keep listening to me here, okay? Any person, man or woman, in your situation would be hard pressed to do much more than what you're doing. You're facing an unwinnable situation, okay? And your priority right now is to take care of your family. That has to take precedent over working on this comic. You've got 2 kids. Now, they are not the reason that your comic isn't succeeding. So you have to be very, very careful about how you allow yourself to process this information, okay? When I tell you that you should be focused on raising your kids right now, if you had 2 azaleas at home, I'd tell you to go home and take care of your azaleas. Okay? The kids are not the reason. In other words, this is something that if you remove the kids from the equation, you'd still be in this situation. Okay? But you do have kids. And it is important, especially if your wife sounds like she's the breadwinner, as a partner in that life relationship, you need to do your part, and your part is raising those kids. Now, when I say that you should stop the comic, I do not mean that you should stop being creative. In fact, what I'm prescribing for you, what I'm suggesting to you, is 100% different than that. If I were pulling the strings in your life, which I'm not, this is my suggestion. You're free to take it or leave it. I would say stop the comic right now. Full stop. Stop the Patreon. Thank everybody for their readership and for their support. Leave the site up. You know, knowing the ad situation as I do, I can't imagine you're doing much better than I was doing when I finally took the ads off of my site. But leave it up. Let it earn whatever it's going to earn in ad income. Leave that piece of work up there. Leave that body of work up there with a note that you're going on an extended hiatus. And focus on your family for a little bit, all right? What I'm hearing here is that there's bills that need to be paid, and you guys are struggling like a lot of families. I know my family couldn't make it on one income for very long. There are very few families that can do that. And you may very well take a look at this situation and decide that if it fits your family structure, that part-time job you took, you may think about making that into a full-time job or replacing that with a full-time job so that you can pay the bills that a family of 4 is going to experience as you're going along, okay? That should be your priority right now. Those kids are only going to be small ones. Take it from somebody who's got an 11-year-old and a 15-year-old. Okay, I've been in your shoes, and that time goes by really fast. And this is one of the I can tell you from the heart, this is one of the best times in your life. And if you're not paying attention, you're going to miss it. Okay, so you should be focused on doing what you need to do for your family. That means paying bills, taking care of kids, doing your job around the house, doing what you need to do to keep that family afloat, to help your family to thrive. And however you and your wife work out those roles is how you should definitely do it. Now, That does not mean you stop being a creative person. Comics will still be there when these kids are older and you have more time and you have your family is in a more comfortable situation. You've got the bills paid. You've got a little bit more in savings. You can come up for air a little bit. The comics will still be there. Readers will still be there. Many of your readers will remember you. You will be able to reach out to those people, and even if all of those readers that you built over 12 years, even if they all disappear, there are millions of new readers where that came from. You will always have readers that you can reach out to. There will always be comics. There will always be an internet. There will always be a way of publishing comics, of getting your stuff out to new people. And what I want you to do is to take that soul-crushing deadline, that expectation that you need to do another comic, that if you don't do another comic, then you will have failed, and you got to do one next week, and you got to do one next week, and how am I going to find the time? I want you to take all of that and put it aside and get a sketchbook. And I want you to be a husband and a dad. By all means, I want you to be a husband and a dad. But I also want you to take a couple hours in the evening or in the morning, wherever you fit the time in, and just fill that sketchbook and the one after that and the one after that with whatever you want to work on. I specifically don't want you to keep working on your title. The thing that you're doing right now, the characters you're doing, I want you to let them end. And that's not because you didn't do a good job or any of this failure stuff that's ringing in your head, because I want you to have a completely blank slate. I want you to have no expectations. I want you to open yourself up to a whole bunch of other stuff that you've been ignoring because you had to do the comic for next week and the comic for next week and the comic for next week. So leave those characters where they are and do whatever's in your head at the time. If that means writing stories for your kids or stories that you think your kids would enjoy, then that's what it means. If it means writing a little anecdote about being a stay-at-home dad, that's what it means. With no thoughts of publishing these yet, we're not going to trade one noose for another, okay? Just put them in the sketchbook. You have an amazing opportunity here that people who are feeding their websites don't have. You're going to take all of this stuff and put it into sketchbook after sketchbook. I want you to still have a creative outlet. What I don't want you to do is put the pressure on yourself to build another webcomic. I want you to take a break. I want you to take a break for at least a couple years. I want you to completely separate yourself. Still being creative, still filling that sketchbook, and the sketchbook after that, and the sketchbook after that. And take that creativity and pump it into stuff that don't have anything to do with comics. Carving pumpkins with your kids for Halloween, doing Halloween costumes, decorating the front porch for trick-or-treaters. All of that creative energy, I want you to pour it into anything that's in front of you, but I don't want you to do a comic for a little while. Here's why I say that. I want you to fill that sketchbook. And later on, when you're in a different place in your life, I'm going to have you go back to that sketchbook. And you will have that thing that I keep trying people to understand in their writing, where I talk about on the webcomics.com, I talk about, the fermentation process of writing. You will have all of that fermentation, hopefully a couple years worth of fermentation. And you can look back at that stuff that you wrote 2 years ago with a dispassionate eye because you've lost your emotional connection to it. And you can start to rewrite it and say, okay, I know it's not working with this. I can see it clearly because you will be separated from it. Take it from somebody that's been doing this for a long time. And you, I'm sure you already understand it. You've been doing this for 12 years. Look at the stuff that you did in your first year. You know exactly how to fix that. You know exactly how to rewrite that. You know how you would do it differently now if you were doing it all over again, because you're dispassionate now. You've lost the emotional connection to that stuff that you did 12 years ago. You will have books and books and books full of that, and stories. And you will find that you do a whole bunch of things that fit into one theme, and you'll do a whole bunch of things that fit into another theme. Maybe you've got a children's book at the end of this. Maybe you've got a series of books at the end of this. Maybe you've got something that has nothing to do with comics at the end of all this. Maybe you've got sketches, illustrations, stories, novels. You're going to fill that sketchbook with whatever's on your mind at that time. And then a couple years later, you're going to go back and with a objective eye, you're going to be able to look at that stuff. And later on, your kids are bigger. They're at school for a greater amount of time. I know of where I speak. Right now, I just dropped my kids off at school. One's in high school, one's in middle school. I have way more time than I had when my kids were in single digits. I guarantee you, okay? It's going to happen. You're going to come up for air. Right now, you need to go into a creative cocoon. You need to take this need to do next week's comic off of your shoulders. Get your neck free of the yoke, okay? Shrug it off. Focus on the things that when you're an old man, you're not going to wish that you had done one more strip about these characters. If you're going to wish that you had more time with your family. I guarantee. Look, how many times have we heard this story, right? You take that time with your kids. You only get it once. They're great kids. And again, be very careful how you allow your brain to process this. I am not saying because you have kids you can't work on comics. Again, I'm repeating myself, but this is important. If you had 2 dogs at home, I'd say go home and take care of your dogs. The kids are not the reason that your comic isn't working. Your comic isn't working is because you are in a situation right now where would be impossible for a regular person to do good comics. You're in a no-win situation. So Kobayashi Maru that son of a gun and cocoon yourself. Not shut yourself out from the world, but cocoon yourself from webcomics. You're going to close the door for a little bit. Again, still going to be there when you come back. Nothing's going to evaporate. But the fact of the matter is after 12 years, you are at a certain place where you are right now where if you pushed and pushed and pushed, you're not going to get a whole lot further. You are where you are right now. And it's a place where it is not generating the kind of income where it should take you away from this other stuff. You got bills to pay. I know the situation you're in. You got bills to pay, you got a family to raise, and you feel like if you just had one more week or if you just had one more hour a day to work on this, none of that is going to matter. You are in a situation where you're expecting way too much of yourself. Now, I've seen pictures of you on the internet. You look like a young guy. I think you got another good 50 or 60 years on the planet. And I don't say that facetiously. You look like you're maybe in your 20s, maybe scratching 30. You got a long time on the planet. What we're talking about is a couple years, maybe 5 years. 5 years in a lifetime is not that big of a deal. 5 years, your kids are going to be in school more. You're going to be in a different situation. You're going to have, again, your family's going to be in a different place. You're going to be able to come up for air a little bit, and you will have sketchbooks full of stuff. Put a pause just for a minute. Fast forward yourself 5 years. Right now, go back, okay, come back. Sorry for the time jump. Right now, you are desperate for an idea. I guarantee you're desperate to squeeze out something creative. because of the situation, the life situation you're in. You're desperate for an idea. Now, fast forward 5 years. You've got 5, 10 sketchbooks full of ideas. Now, instead of trying to come up with an idea and then slapping that on the page as quickly as you can because the bus is going to be showing up in 5 minutes and you're going to have to get the kid on the bus or whatever your situation is. Now, instead of slapping the first thing that comes to mind onto the page and trying to get it out as quickly as possible, backgrounds, forget about backgrounds, just get some faces on there. Now you can take those ideas and polish them and refine them, and you have the emotional distance that you can do that effectively. What would you give right now in your life? What would you give to have 10 sketchbooks full of decent ideas? You'd give your left arm for it. I know, unless you're a left-handed drawer, in which case you'd give your right arm for it, right? So give 5 years future you that gift. Take a break. Take a break. You're killing yourself. And unless you're an extraordinary person, unless you're an amazing person, you're probably not as good of a dad as you could be, and you're probably not as good as a husband as you could be. I'm not saying you're bad at either one of those things. I'm saying that if you take this thing off of your psyche, you could probably be better at both of those things. And your family could be in a better situation. Like I said, if it works for your family to take that part-time job and turn it into a full-time job, so be it. Get those bills paid. 6 and 1, the bills are only going to get bigger as these kids go on. You got 2 colleges to think about yet. Get some bills paid. Later on, when you're in a better place, you're going to give 5 years from now, you're going to give that future self a tremendous gift of a whole stack of sketchbooks full of stuff that is ready to be polished and refined into good work. You are not going to stop being creative. You are, if you decide that it's best for you to take this advice, you are going to stop putting yourself under that pressure of doing a comic on a regular basis. And later on, comics will still be there. Now, you are not the first person I've given this advice to, okay? And I'll tell you exactly what's going to happen next. If you decide, well, one of 2 things, obviously. One is you decide that I'm full of shit, and that's your right. You're going to decide that I'm full of shit, and what I was saying, there was some piece of the puzzle that I didn't realize. You may even try to write me a second email saying, but what you didn't consider was, and I will tell you right now that I will probably tell you, yep, you're probably right, even if I don't agree, because I have no intention of arguing this point. So if you think that there's some piece of this puzzle I've missed, and if I just knew this one extra thing, or what I didn't mention, or what I don't seem to be considering is, save your email, because I'm not a fighter, I'm not an advocate, and I don't care which way you choose. This is your life. I'm not going to live your life. I have no horse in this race. So if you tell me there's one thing that I didn't consider, or I didn't look at it this way, I'm going to tell you, yeah, you're right. You should do what you should do. Because I'm not going to argue with you. So save your email. If you decide that I'm full of shit for whatever reason, then you keep living your life, and good luck. And you very well may be right. That I've been wrong lots of times. You might be right that I'm wrong on this occasion. And here's the other one that's going to happen. Because I gave this advice to another guy about a year or so ago. And I went through the very same kind of conversation, and I said, take a break. Come on. The internet's still going to be there when you get back. And he's like, you know what? You're right. Everything you said makes sense. I'm done. I'm gonna take a creative cocoon, and I'm gonna stop putting that pressure over myself, and I'm gonna do sketches, and I'm gonna do this and that. There's all kinds of stuff I can do, and I'm going to fill a sketchbook, and it was all the same kind of conversation I just had with you. And he was back in 2 months, doing something that clearly what he said to himself was, well, Brad's doing TNA comics on Patreon. He's making a lot of money, so he immediately started doing comics with a lot of nudity and stuff. And I think he found out really quick that it's a lot tougher to do adult comics than to just draw boobs. And I don't know that he's updating anymore. He might have he might have gone back into his creative cocoon. I haven't really checked up, but I know that I don't think it was very successful. If you do take my advice, you are probably going to be back on the internet at least one or two more times before you finally decide to truly take a break from this. But I hope that you don't. I hope that you take a real break. And just to wrap this up, and maybe this is an anachronistic idea or an anachronistic metaphor, but I want you to think about this guy, and he wanted to be a comedian. And he did the nightclubs, he did the comedy clubs and everything, and he was pretty good. And he did it for a lot of years, and he was making a little money, but he wasn't breaking through. He wasn't getting there. And he got a couple of kids, just like you. And he realized that to support his family, this comedy thing wasn't going to work. And he became an aluminum siding salesman. And he got really good at selling aluminum siding. It wasn't a great life. It wasn't a great career. It wasn't no child goes to kindergarten and says, someday when I grow up, I'm going to be an aluminum siding salesman, right? But he was really good at it because he was always using comedy in his sales. He made people laugh, and when people laughed, their guard went down, and before you know it, they were buying more aluminum siding than they knew what to do with. They were siding the doghouse with that stuff. Because he was really good, and he was always perfecting jokes, always perfecting delivery, always using this at the same time he was supposedly taking a step back from comedy. And he raised his kids, and he did a real nice job from everything that I never met the guy, but he raised his kids, he raised his family. And later on, when the kids were older and grown up, and he was in a different place in his life, he went back, but he came back a completely different comedian. He had a lot more polish. He had a bigger repertoire of humor that he could pull from. He had a lot of stuff that he had written in that, however long it was, 5-10 years. He had a greater repository, and he had more polish, and he had better stuff. And he went up having done cold calls, knocked on somebody's door and start selling them an aluminum siding on a cold call. You do that, and you can certainly walk up to a microphone and talk to a nightclub full of people. It all turned out to be training to make him into one of, in many people's estimations, certainly mine, a fantastic stand-up comedian. And when that call from the Ed Sullivan Show came, and so that now I'm starting to date it, call from the Ed Sullivan Show came, he went out there, and when he got that next opportunity, by the way, you don't just get one opportunity in life. If you think, I'm missing my big opportunity, there's lots of opportunities that come through. It's just which one you're ready for and which one that you choose to take. But when that next opportunity came, the door swung around again. The Ed Sullivan Show called. He went out there and killed. And he became Rodney Dangerfield. All right, and if you follow stand-up comedy, if you listen to stand-up comedians talk, you will find that there are fewer people that are held in such high regard as that man and his ability to, particularly in the area of one-liners. And he's certainly not everyone's taste in comedy. I get that, but if you listen to stand-up comedians talk about who they respect, who they honor and admire, in terms of stand-up comedy, and you'll hear that guy's name over and over again. And he was one of the great second acts in American entertainment history. All of which to say is that going into a creative cocoon is not the end of your story. In fact, it very well may be the beginning. So if you're in this situation, if you're like, oh man, the bills are piling up and I've been doing this for several years and it just doesn't seem to be getting any better, and the stuff I'm putting out just isn't the quality that I know I'm capable of, I think you need to pull back. I think we are so enamored with this idea of this instant success. For decades now, it's become a trope, right? The training montage, the rock song comes up, bop, 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 bop. The guy trains. There's a few seconds of him training here, a few seconds of him training there. By the time the song is over, he's amazing at this thing, and it's given us a warped idea of what it means to practice and become good at something. I think we need to take a step back from that and realize that this thing that we're doing is a marathon. It's a long-term thing. And if your life situation is keeping you from doing this, I think expecting more of yourself, I think expecting unreasonable amounts from yourself is punishing to yourself and punishing to those around you. So take a little time, be a dad, be a husband, and take some time for yourself and fill that sketchbook, but don't put that expectation of building a webcomic along with all that stuff. It doesn't fit. And you've already seen in your life, deep down, you know that this isn't fitting. And realize that this is not the end of your story. This is the beginning of a middle chapter, and your story has a lot more pages left in it. You can definitely expect that later on, and for the love of God, give yourself years, not months, not weeks, give yourself a couple years before you even think about posting stuff again. Fill that sketchbook. And then go back and you're either going to have brand new stories to tell and a polished way of telling them, or you're going to have, like I said before, stacks of sketchbooks filled with stuff that you can refine and polish. But take the time for yourself. You've got a lot of years on the planet. Take a little bit of time and be nicer to yourself. You're expecting something that is Herculean, all right? And there's no shame, there's no failure in not being able to carry out a God-level task, all right? So be nice to yourself. Take a break. That's my thoughts. And maybe that applies to some of the rest of you too. It's certainly something that's been on my mind an awful lot. We have huge expectations, and we keep beating ourselves up because it isn't happening. There is a value to a creative cocoon, and it doesn't mean it's the end. It just means that it's the middle or the beginning of a new thing. That's my thoughts. This is Webcomics Confidential. My name is Brad Geiger. Do you agree? Am I full of shit? Hit the comments down in webcomics.com and let's discuss this. I think there's a lot there to be discussed. And we will see you next time.